Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. You can find me on Twitter at DanHarris80. It is Wednesday. It is a great Wednesday for two reasons. Number one, I don't know, in like 20 minutes, we've got a football game going on, which is just plain weird. But second, we've got both Mike Tagliere and Kyle Yates on the show. Find them on Twitter at, what the heck is that? Why do I always forget? Is it Mike Tagliere NFL and at Kyle Y NFL, right? I mean, it's not as if I do this every single day or anything like that. Legitimately, this is like you're on a test and you're like, okay, the capital of the United States is, oh no. And you just freeze for a second. That's like me with your darn Twitter profile. Anyway, hi guys. It starts at show week 12 and a half. What's going on? How are you?
I'd say ours is easy compared to yours. I mean, Dan Harris 80. Like, what is?
Do you know what the 80?
I'm guessing it's the birth year.
It is the birth year. That's correct. Which means
You're
Yates.
So
how
old.
old am I?
You're so old.
That is the correct
60.
answer. I don't even need a number.
How old
just
are you?
that I'm
Old. Just old.
old. Very, very old. They don't make numbers that count up that high. But yes, guys, this is the weirdest. Tags, you've been doing this for a millennium. Yates, you've been doing this for like, a year. This is the weirdest start-sit show we've ever had, right?
Yes.
Because we have a game that hasn't been played yet from last week. Now, we were talking about the show. We wanted to get this out, obviously, so we didn't want to record this at like 7 p.m., so we decided to do it now just before the game starts. But I don't know, Tags, you were talking about a little bit, like doing the primer. You can't do anything with the games involving the Ravens and the Steelers really yet, can you?
Yeah, no, I've been getting up at like 3:30 in the morning this week, and like I had a schedule, and it's making me feel less stressed and all that stuff. And then I get to around noon today, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do anything with those games. Basically, I'm stuck until this game is played. So I started working on some other things and the intro and all that stuff. So it kind of sucks, and I had to do rankings without actually writing these games up. So it's a little odd this week, man. I mean, do you think this is the only time ever where this is like a once in a history thing where we're going to have Wednesday football? Is it realistic to say that this is probably the last time this will ever happen?
Ordinarily, I would say yes, but given what we're dealing with right now, they are, and I kind of want to say kudos to the NFL for finding a way to make this happen, as crazy as it is. Like, we do have a full slate of games this week. One of them was on Wednesday. That's fine. So I don't want to say for sure, but probably. That's probably, right? I mean, I don't know. Whatever. Yates, also, I'm going to need detailed projections for all the Steelers players immediately on the show. Are you good with that for next week?
Nope.
No? Not yet? Fine. That's fine. But we'll do starts it anyway. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with the caveat that, yes, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the Steelers-Ravens game today. So of those players, we are ballparking it at this moment. But it starts at show, so you know what we're going to do. We're going to talk about guys who are, within the top 20 that maybe want to fade a little bit, outside the top 20, at least at running back, or top 36 at wide receiver, that we do want to play. All of that good stuff, and we will get into it. But first, our November giveaway is over, and the winner is, I don't know yet. We are figuring it out today. We will probably have it tomorrow. I apologize, but that doesn't mean I can't announce the December giveaway, which is a signed James Robinson helmet. You know James Robinson, the guy who you should be taking over Alvin Kamara for the rest of the season. To enter it, leave an honest review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Then go to fantasypros.com/contest and submit that review. And look, your review, good, bad, whatever you want. Hopefully it's good, but leave an honest review. We read those reviews. We laugh, we cry, we take the criticism or the positive stuff into account. And if you are listening in week 13, we hope that you have gotten some value out of the show this season. And if you want a really easy way to show your appreciation for the three of us, for everything that we do in these podcasts, leaving a review is the really easiest way to do that. And then go ahead, try to win a signed James Robinson helmet by going to fantasypros.com/contest. All right, guys, let's get into it. But before we do, let me hit up a couple of news items that may have an effect on our start-sit decisions. Adam Thielen was activated off the COVID-19 reserve list, and he looks good to go this weekend against the Jaguars. Jonathan Taylor was officially activated off the COVID-19 reserve list, and he practiced today, so he should be good to go this weekend against Houston. Mike Glennon is going to start for the Jaguars this weekend. So, in my 2QB league where I've held on to Gardner Minshew, I'm just mad at this point. Auden Tate was placed on the IR with a shoulder injury. The Colts expect that Paris Campbell is going to be done for the season and unable to return. Savon Ahmed returned to practice. Zach Ertz was activated off the IR. Marquise Pouncey was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list, which you probably already know by the time you listen to this. Adam Humphries returned to practice. Daniel Jones missed practice. We do not expect him to play this weekend. There is optimism that DeAndre Swift is going to return this weekend, but it is worth noting that the team described his recovery as sort of up and down a little bit, so there is uncertainty there, but that's one of the reasons why he hasn't come back yet. Kenny Golladay, though, missed practice today. We do not expect him to be able to suit up this weekend. And Julio Jones and Todd Gurley returned to limited practice. All right, let's get into start, sit now, guys. You know what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about some guys that are outside the guaranteed starts, some guys that are inside the guaranteed starts.
Dan's going to tell you to start Logan Thomas.
Logan Thomas. Before we get into it, let's address Logan Thomas for a second, okay? Because Logan Thomas has become
Is this just a situation where if we ever want to distract Dan Tags, we can just say like Logan Thomas and he'll just like it's a 2-year-old.
And then we'll just walk away for like 5 minutes.
I can be like, Yates, you ranked Frank Gore as your number one last
Logan
week.
Thomas.
What do you respond to that? And you'll say Logan Thomas. I'll be like, well, let's talk about Logan Thomas. But I do want to talk about Logan Thomas for a second because I actually want your honest response to this, because we joke about it all the time on our waiver wire show, because Logan Thomas is on the waiver wire list every single week. But I do want to know, because we tease each other, I get stuff on Twitter about it. Have I actually constantly recommended Logan Thomas as a waiver wire pickup, or is it from the one I'm asking honestly, because I've done 40,000 podcasts this year and it all blends together, or is it from that one time where I was like, nah, dude, Logan Thomas, and we argued over the target, stuff like that? Do I actually recommend him all the time, or was it legitimately that one show, Tags?
I think it was definitely multiple shows.
Okay.
It hasn't been all season, but it was definitely multiple shows. Because I remember, I think that's why it became a thing, where it was like, dude, don't stop talking about Logan Thomas.
All right, so for my start-sit tight end here, I'm just going to be quiet on it because I had a name in mind, but I'm worried about recommending him.
I mean, Dan had a fantastic Week 12. T.Y. Hilton and Logan Thomas.
Yeah, it's good. I definitely was all over them this week. Of course, obviously, I was like, go start those guys. I mean, I figure if you just rank them really high every single week, eventually it'll hit.
Eventually,
all right.
Yep.
Eventually. All right, we're going to start with the running backs here, guys. Outside the top 20 in our expert consensus rankings, Yates, we'll start with you. Give me a name who you're kind of looking to start this week at running back.
Yeah, there's a pretty easy one sitting right outside that threshold there at 21 in half PPR ECR. It's Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake over the past couple weeks has been very heavily involved in his offense. He's scored 3 touchdowns in that time frame and has seen 5 targets and 4 targets each of the past 2 weeks. So he's getting involved in the passing game, which had not been the case earlier on this season. I think with Kyler Murray's shoulder hurting him a little bit here and preventing him from being able to push the ball deep downfield, which is impacting Kyler Murray's fantasy outlook, it's lending itself to Kenyan Drake actually being a very viable fantasy asset. So for him to be outside of the top 20 is a little puzzling to me. I've got him all the way up at all the way up at RB15 this week, so a little bit higher than ECR. I could make the case for him to be pushed up even higher than that, though.
Interesting. Okay, so he's against the Rams. Tags, where do you have Drake this week, and how are you looking at him?
I have him at 21, so I'm pretty much seemingly in line with consensus. Yep. I could actually make the case to put him at 22, I think, but either way, he's right in that territory for me. It's a difficult matchup against the Rams, and Kyler Murray, the fact that Kyler Murray is not running the ball, it is beneficial to Kenyan Drake on the goal line, but they actually have to get there. That's the problem. The Rams... So here's the thing. The Cardinals have their running backs have averaged more yards before contact than any other team in the league, which is kind of remarkable when you think about it. Meanwhile, the Rams have allowed just 1.24 yards before contact to running backs. So something's going to happen here. There's going to be, the stars will align, and we'll see how everything shakes out. But it's not a good matchup. When you look at, they've allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points per weighted opportunity to running backs, behind only the Saints, Steelers, and Bears. Those are 3 teams that you do not want to see on your in your fantasy matchup. So Kenyan Drake, to me, it's good that he's starting to see a few targets in the passing game, because I think he's had 9 targets over the last 2 weeks compared to 11 in his first 8 games, but he's extremely touchdown dependent right now, because I don't see him rushing for over 75 yards in this game, and even if he does get some targets, it's not like he's going to rack up James White type numbers through the air. So I have him as like a low end RB2 this week.
Yeah, I have him at 18, so basically right in between you two and right in between Yates, where you have him in ECR, because Tags is in line with that. I think the thing for me with Drake, and it is a tough matchup, but we're all starting him, so it doesn't really matter there, is that I'm a little concerned about Murray's shoulder injury. Not that it's going to necessarily affect him, but like significantly in his passing. But what I do think is he's running a little bit less. Now, this may have just been, he obviously was injured in that Thursday night game, so maybe that was the cause for that. But he ran a little less in this past game, and I think that with that, they're more likely. Part of Murray's big thing is that he was kind of the quote unquote goal line back, right? I don't know how many rushing touchdowns he's got. I think 9 maybe this year, but he was sort of taking the ball himself when they got even close and running that option. It seems like maybe they're going to get away from that a little bit and are willing to give the ball more to Drake as they get closer to the goal line here. So as he might need a touchdown, but it does strike me as they are more willing at this point to give it to Kenyan Drake. So I think that's fine. Yates, if you had to go with Drake versus Nyheim Hines, half PPR against Houston this week, who do you have?
I'll go Drake there, especially with Jonathan Taylor back in the lineup.
How about Drake versus Clyde Edwards-Helaire against Denver?
Yeah, I'll go Drake there again. Yeah, I get the matchup's tough against the Rams, but he's seeing too much work. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you can't bet on his workload any given week.
Yeah. All right, let's get to you, Tags. Running back outside the top 20. Who do you want to start this week?
I'm gonna play Jonathan Taylor. If I knew more about, I would throw Melvin Gordon into this mix if we knew that Philip Lindsay was out for sure. It seems like he's going to be, but we don't have anything concrete saying that because they say apparently the injury was lesser than they thought it was going to be. But I'll go with Jonathan Taylor here. We saw Jordan Wilkins get nicked up last week, and he had a pretty big role with Jonathan Taylor out last week. Nyheim Hines is clearly just not someone they want to give a whole lot of carries to. If you look at him on the season, we talked about this in the recap show. Hines doesn't have a single carry of 15 plus yards this season. It's because he's just not the type of running back that you want trotting out there and like carrying the ball 15 plus times. So when you look at this matchup against the Houston Texans, who have allowed a league high 1,564 yards on the ground to running backs.
Insane. Yeah.
On the ground, that is more than 23 other teams have allowed to running backs as a whole. So, I mean, if you look at that production and you compare it with Jonathan Taylor's skill set, you look at the last time Jonathan Taylor was actually on the field against the Packers, he racked up, I think it was 26 touches in that game. This matchup, and you, on top of that, you take away Bradley Roby from this Texans defense, who is their best cornerback. I mean, they're falling apart there. They're not generating a pass rush. They don't have cornerbacks. The Colts, basically, this is a divisional game. They just want to walk away with a win. But the good thing is, for whatever reason, and I would pick the under if I was forced to, but this has made me look foolish in the past to take an under in 2020. But this game still has a total of, I think it was 51 points, or 53 points it's up to now. Jesus, that is massive. Okay, so they're expecting a lot of scoring. So maybe I need to rethink that, because usually when a spread, when I think it's going to be under and it moves up 2 full points, I don't really know where this scoring's coming from.
How is Houston going to score? Like,
that's what I want to know.
Where is Houston going to score all these points?
What's the spread?
Okay. Oh, never mind. I locked it in when it was 53. Now it's moved down to 51. That makes more sense. Okay. I'm sorry.
What's the spread, though?
Indy -3.
It's closer than you think, right, Yates?
Yeah, that should be more.
I think so too. I'm picking Indy in the under here, but that's what I'm saying. It's like you think about the Texans without, they obviously lost DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. Now they lost Will Fuller, and if you look at Deshaun Watson's splits with and without Fuller in the lineup, it's massive. It's night and day. It's kind of ridiculous. Brandon Cooks is a good receiver, but he's not a workhorse. He's not that prototypical number one receiver that you're giving 12 targets to. So. I like Taylor a lot in this game. I think the Colts win this game. The one thing to watch is their offensive line, because Ryan Kelly, their center, did have to miss last week. But again, I don't even think it matters against this Houston team. Every single running back that gets 15 plus carries is going to dominate against them. So Taylor is someone that I actually have ranked higher than Kenyan Drake.
Where do you have Taylor ranked this week, Tex?
As of right now, I have him at RB 19. I want to move him higher, to be honest with you, but I've always said do not go all in on a Indianapolis Colts running back. Don't do that.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, because Taylor was on my list as well. He's ranked 26th in ECR. I think he should be higher than that. But Tags, let's say this. Okay, Taylor's coming off a great game. Absolutely great game. Also, it's great that neither Nyheim Hines nor Jordan Wilkins had a particularly good game against Tennessee. So everything plays in his favor. And Yates, you mentioned it, which actually I didn't even catch. Wilkins had actually left that game for a little while with a rib injury, I think it was, Yates?
All I saw was that Frank Reich came out on Monday and said that he was pretty banged up. So I would be really surprised if Wilkins suits up in this game.
I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he suits up, but I would be surprised if he gets like a heavy
lot of playing
load,
time,
right?
Right.
But Tags, here's my question to both of you, actually, because we have seen this before. We saw him, I believe it was against the Ravens, right, where he scored that early touchdown. He looked pretty good. He fumbled, and that's it. I mean, this isn't a Bruce Arians situation, and, well, an old Bruce Arians situation, since Ronald Jones can fumble and then have the biggest game of his career. But Jonathan Taylor, it's a great matchup. I want to start Jonathan Taylor. Maybe Tags just gets to your point of like, this is why I'm not pushing him to like 12 or something like that. If he goes out there, if he fumbles the ball, is there still a risk, Tags? Do you think at this point that Jonathan Taylor could be like, I'm sorry, if Wilkins is active, we're putting you to the side now and you're basically out for the rest of the game. We'll roll with these other two guys. Or is he safe enough that you think he could withstand something like that?
No, he's certain. I mean, I think a lot of running backs have that risk to them. Obviously, Ronald Jones is one of those guys, and people want to rank Ronald Jones.
Maybe not anymore.
That's don't do this, Dan. Do not do this to me.
Sorry.
You know how I feel about Ronald Jones. Cheater.
Would you like to go into that one more time, Tags?
I do not.
There's
I
this
do
great
not.
analogy. No, okay, go ahead.
But no, I think a lot of running backs run that risk, and yes, it is there with Jonathan Taylor. And again, that's why I'm not ranking him higher, because I could make the case to move him all the way up to like the RB13 this week.
Yeah, I think the way I feel about him is it seems really this is week 13. Okay, for a lot of fantasy managers who are still paying attention, this is a very, very big week because this is probably going to decide whether or not you get into your playoffs. Maybe it'll decide if you get your bye. And relying on Jonathan Taylor is scary to do, but I do think that, yes, I feel comfortable enough with this that I could, regardless of if Wilkins plays. Yates, how do you feel about him? Does it matter if Wilkins suits up in this game, whether you're going to recommend Taylor?
So I'm glad Tags brought him up because this is an oversight on my part. I went through and did gather the list of names that we were going to talk about. I did that earlier today, and Jonathan Taylor hadn't been taken off the COVID list at that point. So he was still down in my rankings at like 29. I didn't catch it. So I literally just now, looking at my rankings, I mean, with ECR has Kareem Hunt at 13, I think, or at 12. He's in that range. I would feel more comfortable playing Jonathan Taylor over Kareem Hunt with what we've seen here recently. So
Thank you.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor at 12 right now in my rankings. He'll move. Like, it's Wednesday and it's not even freaking week 13 yet, but he'll move. But as of right now, I mean, based on what we saw the last time he was on the field, 22 carries, or 26 total touches, and Wilkins being banged up, I don't see how you can get away from starting Jonathan Taylor in this game.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Kareem Hunt a little bit later because he is, 14th?
Yeah.
In UCR? That's nuts to me. That's nuts to me, right? Mm-hmm. Tags, out of curiosity, where do you have Hunt in your rankings?
You mentioned it. We're going to talk about it later.
Okay.
I have 22.
That's where I have him. Yes. All right. We'll save that then for a little bit. So I agree. I think we all agree Taylor is a guy. I think everything sets up perfectly for him. And again, we also mentioned it the other day, which is Taylor didn't actually test positive anyway, which is something that I think fantasy managers can keep in mind because Cam Newton is the one who always comes to mind as somebody who basically admitted that he was affected even after he came back because sometimes you can have symptoms that linger a little bit and may affect your play. He was just a close contact, which is why he's good to go. So I think you can roll him out. I will throw out a couple of other names here, guys. Taylor was my guy. We'll go to Frank Gore, again, who is 30th in ECR tags. You mentioned him on the waiver wire show. I think that's right. I think you can get away with starting him. I believe I have him 26th, so not crazy, not within an RB2 range, but it is somebody with, he's got at least 17 touches each of the last two games. Raiders are terrible against the run. They allow touchdowns galore, so he's going to get the ball regardless. The other guy I want to mention is Duke Johnson. Now, I know Duke Johnson is not somebody that we really feel comfortable. And again, this is assuming that David Johnson is not back, which
is he not playing?
David Johnson?
I was assuming David Johnson was going to play.
David Johnson is eligible to come back unless I've missed something since the start. The only thing I have is a quote from Romeo Crennel, which is like, yeah, we are really hopeful that we can activate him off the IR soon and that he'll play soon. I'm assuming right now, and I'm ranking Duke Johnson, not David Johnson, because tags, this is a weird one. Again, it's a concussion. I've never seen a player get a concussion and then immediately be placed on IR. Now, we've got the 3-game IR, so it's a little different, but I've never seen where you declare somebody out for 3 weeks. I don't know. But if Duke Johnson plays and David Johnson does it, he's ranked right now by our expert consensus ranking as if it's going to be Duke Johnson, and he's 22. That ranking is completely fair, but I do wonder, guys, and I'm wondering what you think of this. What are they going to do at this point? We just talked about that. How are they going to score in this game? Duke Johnson at least has 9 targets in the last 2 games. That should be more, but they're at least getting him a little more involved. You saw the touchdown catch against the Lions. He had another one that got them down to the 1-yard line when they had pass interference called. Now, they're not giving him the ball close to the goal line. Apparently, that's CJ Pro size now. But if it's Duke Johnson, even if it's that matchup, we don't know whether or not, by the way, DeForest Buckner is going to play in this game. He actually was a positive test. So he's on the COVID-19 list, but he was a positive test, so that's going to be longer. So if he doesn't play in this game, that certainly opens things up a little more. He's a guy who I think can get away with playing. But, guys, don't you think that they're going to have to target the running backs more than they have? We've been asking them to do it all year. They have no wide receivers that they can rely on at this point other than Cooks. Don't you think that they're going to get a little more run here with the running backs?
I mean, against the Colts, sure. But I don't know if it's, again, if Buckner is back, if Bobby Okariki's back, their linebacker, then Duke Johnson's not getting anything on the ground. Like, he'd probably wind up with like 12 carries for like 28 yards or something like that.
He's probably not getting anything on the ground either, and regardless, right?
So, yeah, it's difficult to love him there. It makes me feel like Giovanni Bernard, like those guys belong in the same conversation. I'm not particularly high on Bernard this week, so that's probably the territory I'd put him in. I'd like David Johnson a little more because David Johnson, assuming he plays, I have him at 24. But if David Johnson were out, I'm looking at it and trying to figure out. I'd probably put Duke Johnson around RB 30, right around that territory.
I'm 20th, so that shows you where I'm thinking about him right now. I think that they're going to have to figure out a way. I think they're gonna split him out wide more. I think they're gonna know they're gonna need points too. They're gonna do this. It would be mind-boggling to me if they don't make use of the fact that Duke Johnson, by the way, as much as David Johnson, they're both pass catchers. They can both factor into the passing game. So
Dan,
yeah.
Just remember this. David Johnson his best attribute was a pass catcher.
Yes.
They have not used him as a pass catcher all year long. And I understand they're running out of options. I get that much. But I'm saying is, like, this team doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
That is accurate. that is the correct answer. I 100%.
It's a little bit better since Bill O'Brien's gone.
It definitely is better since Bill O'Brien. That's true.
That was point number 1. Thank you, Yates. Absolutely right. It's a little better since Bill O'Brien is gone. But also, Tags, I'm not going to underestimate here what the loss of Will Fuller is. And just that fact that they got rid, that Randall Cobb's on IR and no Kenny Stills even, like, legitimately. The other options, Akins hopefully gets more involved. He could have had some touchdowns in this last game. But I do think finally that we're going to see whoever it is out there get involved in the passing game.
Whoever it
is at running back.
Dan, would you... I'm looking at my rankings. Like, Duke Johnson or Latavius Murray? Who would you rather play?
I have Duke Johnson in like another stratosphere than Latavius Murray at this point. I have. Where do you guys have Murray? I have Murray 33rd.
30.
I have him 28.
The consensus is high on him, man.
It's 28. It's where Yates.
Oh, is it?
Him.
Oh, I thought it was 25. My bad.
No. Maybe you're looking at standard.
No, I'm not.
All right. Well, or maybe I'm looking at standard. No, it's not PPR.
I said I thought. I was wrong.
No, it's 28. They have him at 28. Yeah, I've got Duke. I'm in half PPR. I'm going with Duke. I get it with Murray, and I'm probably going to be forced to start Murray in a couple leagues and not feel terrible about it. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I really think, and there's not nearly as much, other than the fact, again, 9 targets in the last 2 games. It's at least better than we had been seeing before. And again, he could have easily had a second touchdown in this game had there not been pass interference on that early one that led to them getting down to the 1-yard line. I do have to really dig into the fact that CJ Prosise was the goal line back.
I think he was hurt. I think he was dinged up on that play, that one you're talking about.
That's right.
And I think that's why Prosise came in.
I do agree with that, but later in the game, they again put Prosise in, which maybe said, okay, I don't know. Now, this, again, could have been something where it was game script where Johnson had gotten a few touches. Maybe he needed a little bit of a break. That's fine. That first one, I agree with you. I did think that it was because he got a little dinged up on the pass interference call. Start Duke Johnson over everybody else. That's the advice I'm going to give. Okay, nice. Let's go to wide receiver. Let's go to you, Tags. Who are you looking to start who's outside the top 30 at wide receiver?
The safest wide receiver play that's always outside the top 30 that nobody ever wants to rank high, and that's Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard is he's the definition of safety, right? Like he's finished with at least I think it's at least 6 catches and 39 yards in each of the 6 games that he's played from start to finish this year. It may not sound like much, but that's basically a floor of 10 PPR points. That's basically what you're looking at. And now going up against the Seahawks, I mean, the Seahawks are not as bad on a per target basis that people think they are, but they see a whole lot of targets and it allows for production. Sterling Shepard, once Colt McCoy came in last week, he saw 4 of the 10 targets that McCoy threw. Again, it's a small sample size, but he really does fit the skill set that Colt McCoy has. He's not going to take a whole lot of shots downfield towards Darius Slayton, who wound up with a big fat 0 last week. Shepard has, again, I always talk about this, 6+ targets in 22 straight games. That's volume you can't find outside the top 30 most of the time. A lot of guys are starting guys that, every single week that get that volume. So when you add in the matchup against the Seahawks, I have him as a top 30 play.
Yeah, I have him at 30th as well. I think that fantasy managers may be a little scared off because of Colt McCoy being in there, but I don't really think it's going to make that much of a difference. Yates, how do you feel about Shepard?
Yeah, Shepard was someone that I had circled because looking outside the top 30, there really are not many wide receivers that I was super excited to talk about here. So Shepard was someone that I talked about, or that I circled, but yet looking at Colt McCoy, even in a great matchup, it's like, what's the upside here, right? So I think the ranking with Shepard here is pretty fair. It wasn't something like I had a 10-spot difference with any of these receivers. So Shepard, for sure, I'm definitely comfortable rolling him into my lineup, but I don't think he possesses much upside.
Tags, would you rather start Shepard or Tyler Boyd against Miami?
Shepard.
Shepard or Jacoby Myers against the Chargers?
Shepard.
Shepard or Cole Beasley against the 49ers?
Shepard.
Okay, Shepard or Corey Davis against Cleveland?
Ooh, those guys are in the same tier for me. They're right there. I do have Shepard's just a tad higher, but it's close.
All right. I like it. All right, before we get on to our next player, I want to ask you guys, if you could only have one food, that's it, just one, every meal for the rest of your life, what would it be, Tags?
So health is not, doesn't matter.
Hey, you can do whatever you want. You can take it to consideration.
Well, hell, if I don't gain any weight eating whatever I want, I'm going to eat pizza every single day.
Yates, what about you?
Oh, I'd go for some pasta.
Ooh, pasta's good. Pizza's good. Neither one of those is the correct answer. The correct answer is actually cereal. You cannot mess it up, number one, right? You pour your cereal, you add your milk, then you eat. Number 2, comes in a bunch of variety, different flavors, all sorts of stuff you can have. Number 3, unless you go full sugary, and this is, I'm taking into account my health, Tags, it's not unhealthy. Your doctor is never going to tell you, hey, you know what? You need to cut back on that cereal consumption that you've got going right now. Now, you guys know I've never been a breakfast guy, but pro tip, anyone looking to break into the fantasy sports or podcasting industry, it is very difficult to do a podcast when you have no food in your system. So I started having to eat breakfast, and my wife was like, set an example for your children. Do not eat the sugary cereals. So she said, have some Magic Spoon cereal. And Yates, I was really reminded of that scene in Friends where Joey's trying to think of negatives about Rachel, and he's like, she made me switch to light mayo. That's it. And you know what? Tastes just as good and my pants fit better. Right? That's how I feel about when my wife was like, no, you can't have like the sugary cereal. Have some Magic Spoon cereal. 4 different kinds: frosted, blueberry, cocoa, and fruity. It's all delicious, but it's all healthy. No sugar, 11 grams of protein, only 3 net grams of carbs in each serving. GMO-free, gluten-free, soy-free, grain-free, keto-friendly. And if you don't like it, you don't have to take my word for it. If you don't like it, it's 100% guaranteed. They will refund your money. Go to magicspoon.com/fantasypros, grab a variety pack, use our code FANTASYPROS to get free shipping. That's magicspoon.com/fantasypros. Use the code FANTASYPROS for free shipping. All right, Yates, let's get into your wide receiver outside the top 30. Who do you got?
Yeah, again, I was looking outside the top 30 here, and there weren't really many names that jumped off the page. You have serious concerns with a lot of these guys. So Nelson Agholor is the player I'm going to mention here. It's going to be very difficult to go back to this Raiders offense after looking at what Derek Carr did this past week. Almost called him David Carr. What Derek Carr did this past week, but you're looking at the matchup here against the Jets, and you start your wide receivers against the Jets. Agholor didn't hurt your lineup. For everything that Derek Carr did last week, Agholor didn't hurt it. Now, he didn't help it, but yet he didn't put up a 0 or anything like that. So Agholor, he's 39 in ECR right now. I have him at 32, so it's not anything crazy. But yet I do think that if you're looking at some of these options, a Jerry Jeudy against Kansas City, T. Higgins with the quarterback concerns, like Mike Williams might see coverage from Stephon Gilmore on the outside. Like, there are serious concerns with these guys. I would be starting Nelson Agholor.
Yeah, so he is my guy as well. My one worry about it, again, you said it right, Yates. I think people had pretty high expectations for him coming in against the game in Atlanta, and like he didn't go crazy, and Renfro was involved, Ruggs was involved, but he still had 6 targets, 5 catches, 54 yards. You can live with that, certainly, in a half PPR league. One of my worries with it, Tags, I want to know how you feel about this. This is sort of one where the matchup is really good, but really I feel like when Agholor gets the targets, when he gets, the production, a lot of it is when they're losing, when, they're trailing. And I don't expect that to be in this game for obvious reasons. So what do you think about Agholor in this one, Tags?
I kind of like him. You do have to understand the risk that you're taking when you put him in your lineup, but there's a lot of guys that, Yates hit it on the head. There's a lot of guys in that territory that you kind of feel that way about. Mike Williams against potentially Stephon Gilmore, which is what I'm actually expecting, considering Keenan Allen goes in the slot about 50-55% of the time, and that's where Gilmore doesn't go. And to be honest, if Gilmore does go there, he's really bad there because playing the slot is so much different. So I do like Agholor. You look at the matchup. Lamar Jackson is the cornerback he would see. No, not the Baltimore Lamar Jackson, the Jets one. He's allowed a 146.4 quarterback rating in his coverage this year.
Is that good?
I mean, perfect is 153.8. But there have been 20 wide receivers who have finished as top 48 options against the Jets this year. So it's basically 2 wide receivers per game they're allowing to finish as top 48, which is basically wide receiver 4 territory. That's where I think his floor is this week, to be honest with you. I think there is upside for more. You do take on some risk here for sure, but knowing that, Josh Jacobs is dinged up and the Jets are a better run defense than people, talk about them as, I think that Ruggs and Agholor are potential wide receiver 4s that have some upside this week.
Yeah, no, I like it. Ruggs is definitely a guy who, again, I will, spoiler alert, I was going to mention as kind of the deep sleeper as well. I think he's a guy who could be there. Yeah, I'm totally fine with starting Agholor. I really don't have, that many concerns about it. I think he is kind of the go-to guy. I know we saw Renfro again and we saw Ruggs, but I think they know outside of Waller, Agholor is really the guy that they want to go to. And like we said, start your wide receivers against the Jets. I have a question for you guys. Why is Jamison Crowder ranked higher than Breshad Perriman this week? Tags, can you explain it to me?
Then Perriman, I could get it. To be honest, just because Perriman's targets have been so up and down. Like if you go through his target, here's his target totals by week: 5, 2, 8, 2, 7, 4, 8. So it basically feels like it's a teeter-totter. It keeps going back and forth. We obviously know that Sam Darnold's not taking as many shots down the field as Joe Flacco was, and that obviously hurts Perriman. I think Denzel Mims is coming into his own, and after the bad game that Sam Darnold had last week, I think he might try and get back to basics a little bit and start to involve Crowder a little bit more. I just don't think that they can continually avoid him in matchups. It is tough. Crowder actually does have the toughest matchup on the field this week, and I'm guessing that the Raiders might be without Damon Arnett. He suffered a concussion last week. It was pretty bad. He tried coming back and then was falling over. So I don't know if he's going to play in this week. So the Raiders secondary could be a little bit banged up. And I think there's risk with both of them. I honestly, I think I have them within 3 spots of each other in my rankings.
Yeah, I have them close as well. But I do have Perriman higher. I think you can start all 3 Jets wide receivers as flexes this week.
Wow, that's bold.
I know. Gross.
That's like a Logan Thomas take right there.
This is the grossest thing I've ever said on this podcast, and that is a very high bar. But I do think, first of all, I think with Perriman, I do think I'm really looking more at the last few games when he's been back and fully healthy and in there. Those are the targets. Now he does have one of them with 4. Like you said, he's got at least 54 yards in each of the last 3 games. And I actually think, Tags, and this is much more of a theory with absolutely nothing to back it up, the best types of theories, that I think, there is a very, very realistic chance that the Jets are going to have the number 1 pick in this next draft. There is a very realistic chance that they're going to take a quarterback with that pick, in which case Sam Darnold is going to need another team to take a shot on him. And I think because of that, I think they might be willing to take more shots than Darnold generally does in his career. So even though it didn't look that good in this past game, I think they might continue to take some shots going forward here as Darnold tries to kind of show what he is at least capable of. And it's especially true when you get this matchup where they're going to be chasing points. I think we can safely assume that, like they are every game. I think he's going to continue to take shots. So I feel okay given what we saw from Darnold. I really thought it was going to be the Crowder show back again once Darnold got under center, but we didn't see that. So I don't necessarily think we're going to see that this week. And I think he's going to take shots to both these guys. So I'm willing to kind of start all of them as flex plays. Yates, first start with Perriman particularly, and then just give me your general thoughts on the Jets wide receivers.
Yeah, so after we had our waiver wire live stream yesterday, Dan, you brought up Breshad Perriman and Denzel Mims, and I was like, no, like especially week 13, like heading into the fantasy playoffs, I'm not going to be able to trust them. And then I went back and looked at it a little bit closer, and I was shocked. I don't know how I missed this, but the last 3 games for Breshad Perriman, he's finished as the wide receiver 4. He had that big game against New England. Wide receiver 26 and the wide receiver 31 in half PPR scoring. Like this, he's actually been a steady contributor. Now, you always have the injury concerns with Perriman. That he could leave a game, halfway through it, and that's always going to be there. But I think that he's just in the flex consideration for sure. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to take as strong of a stance as you are with starting all 3 Jets wide receivers, but yeah, you
not on the same team. To be clear, don't do that.
That's what you said.
That's nuts.
That's what you said.
Fair.
So if you're starting all 3, you're in last place in your league.
Right.
No, I just think that he's someone that you can consider, but he absolutely comes with risk.
Again, we are talking about guys who are outside the top 30 here, so please don't go like, oh, great, I can't wait to start all these Jets wide receivers. But I do think, again, we're talking about flex plays, guys who are...
You just said start them as your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and wide receiver 3.
All right.
And flex.
I will say
And flex.
Someone out there is going to start Frank Gore as a running back and Breshad Perriman as a wide receiver, and they're going to win their matchups, and they're going to get into the playoffs, and you're welcome, America. Okay, whatever. Let's move on to a different position where I don't have to talk about the Jets anymore for sure when we get here, and that's quarterbacks who might have fantasy value outside the top 12 in expert consensus rankings. Let's start with you, Yates. Who's a guy outside the top 12 who you might want to start this week?
Yeah, so honorary mention here is Ryan Fitzpatrick, that if he does indeed start, then he's someone that absolutely belongs in your starting lineup. You do have
I think Yates, by the way, he is ranked as if he's a starter this week in consensus, and he's ranked 13th, so he doesn't need an honorary mention. He can be your mention. Like, I think he's ranked as a starter.
Well, I was saying an honorary mention because there's rumors that Tua is going to be coming back. So if Tua comes back in week 13, then you don't start Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's why I was saying. So
maybe, unless you're willing to really go crazy and rank him as the backup, which I might do.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so Ryan Fitzpatrick, if Tua Tagovailoa sits, then obviously he would be the guy that I would talk about. If Tua plays, then I'll go with a guy just inside the top 12. I think he needs to be ranked higher. That's Kirk Cousins. I just wanted to mention him here. Against Jacksonville, you're looking at Dalvin Cook, probably not 100% after the comments made by Mike Zimmer this week saying that he is kind of banged up and all this. I think that you're not going to see Dalvin Cook just absolutely explode. Kirk Cousins has been on fire recently. He has been playing extremely, extremely well. Over his past 5 weeks, he's finished as it's actually kind of funny to watch this, the QB 25, QB 18, QB 11, QB 5, and QB 3. So he has just been playing lights out, and I think that he absolutely belongs in your starting lineup. QB 12 in ECR, I've got him at QB 9.
QB 9. Okay, so are you starting Kirk Cousins or Taysom Hill against Atlanta?
So that was something, they're back-to-back in my rankings. I would personally be starting Kirk Cousins.
How about Kirk Cousins and you may not have it ranked yet, let's assume Lamar Jackson is activated off the COVID-19 list. Jackson versus Dallas or Kirk Cousins against Jackson?
So that was interesting because I have Kirk Cousins above Lamar Jackson, but yet we have the concerns of, okay, is it kind of similar to what we saw with Cam Newton? Does Lamar Jackson come back and be completely, fine? Is he going to just return and get back to what we have been seeing so far this season? I mean, as of late, and even what we've seen this season hasn't been fantastic. So it's a great matchup, but yet at the same time, I do have my concerns.
Tags, where do you have Kirk Cousins ranked this week?
13.
Yep.
I mean, the problem is that they are big favorites in this game, big favorites, and we know that the Vikings ideally they only throw the ball 26, 28 times. That's their goal. And now, granted, Cousins has been efficient, and it's not even just the last 5 weeks. Cousins has been good all year. I think people overlook this just because he doesn't offer anything on the ground. He has very, very minimal volume, but I think that his yards per pass attempt is second in the NFL, and his touchdown percentage is third in the NFL. So he's been good all year. It's just a matter of pass attempts and what you have to worry about because of lack of competition on the other side of the ball. But knowing that Dalvin Cook is banged up, I think that's something that we'll monitor throughout the week because clearly Alexander Madison's not the same running back, and if they're going to dial back some of Dalvin Cook's touches, I don't envision Alexander Madison to be as efficient, so therefore there should be some pass attempts available for Cousins. But again, it's going back to the idea last week where Cousins is a guy, if he has a bad day passing the ball, you're in big trouble because he offers absolutely zero mobility. He has nothing. They do have a ground game. So that's my only concern with him and why I'm unwilling to rank him higher. But I understand the concept.
It is worth noting the over-under in this game is 52.5,
Yeah.
right? So they've got they're 10-point favorites, so they've got an implied point total of
30 points.
Yeah, 30. I mean, they're going to score, and some of that's got to be through the air. He's got
For sure.
Thielen back. Yeah, but I do agree with you, Tags. There is downside and this is the type of game where, it's like Cousins is the type of guy who goes out there in the smash spot and just kind of is like,
Right.
No, sorry. But I mean, we've got him ranked around the same range. Okay,
Yep.
Tags, how about you? Who's a quarterback who you're looking at?
Yeah, I'd be torn between Kirk Cousins and Ryan Fitzpatrick if I had them both on my roster.
I actually have that's really where I differ from ECR is that those two guys are switched in my rankings. I have Fitz 12, Cousins 13.
That's exactly how I have it.
Yep.
Fitzpatrick is a guy, I don't think people realize he's finished with at least 16 fantasy points in 11 of his last 13 starts. So he's given you a fantasy floor. He has some mobility to his game. He has the DGAF factor. And now he's going up against a team. The only quarterback who has thrown more than 30 pass attempts against the Bengals and failed to reach at least 20 fantasy points was Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson completed just 50% of his passes for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, while he ran for a season low 3 yards. So Fitzpatrick, I think he gives you a safe floor and he gives you upside in a plus matchup against the Bengals.
Yeah, Yates, where are you going to rank Fitz, assuming that he is the starter this week?
Yeah, so I've got him at 13 right now. I would assume that he would probably land at 10. So I would probably have Kirk Cousins one spot above, but it's very hard to say that right now.
All right. Can we bring up the name that everybody who's listening to this podcast is like, why aren't Tags and Yates, or at least Yates, bringing this guy up?
Crap.
And that's Mitchell Trubisky against the Lions. Yates, I say it in jest. He's ranked, though, 20th in ECR.
Yeah, it's too
I
low.
have him 16th. This is, they just put Trufant, by the way, on IR.
Yep.
Yates, where do you have Trubisky ranked this week?
I've met 15.
Yeah. Tags, where do you have Trubisky ranked?
18.
Okay.
All right. So here's the thing. Trubisky in his career, I highlighted this in the primer. He's had 6 games against them. He crushes them every single time. He especially since Matt Nagy came there. But I don't want to pretend that the firing of Matt Patricia can change things.
Yep.
I absolutely think it can because we've seen some teams like the Atlanta Falcons who, under Raheem Morris, have played a ton better, and Matt Patricia's just a terrible coach. I'm sorry, that's insensitive. He's just not a very good NFL coach. That's the better way to say it. But he just hasn't been good. The defense has been the worst part of that team, and I wonder if it's like one of those situations where they just start playing better because he's no longer there. Like even Kenny Golladay, actually, there was a tweet about Matt Patricia's firing on Instagram, and apparently he liked the tweets.
Oh, yeah. You saw a ton of former players come out and talk about him.
Yeah, which is never good. So, that's my concern about Trubisky. Obviously, they don't have a ground game that's going to, David Montgomery, I like him just fine. I think he's a borderline RB1 this week, but he's not going to go out there and rush for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's just not going to happen. So, Trubisky is a fine play. Like, if you're searching, you're desperate, and those guys that we talked about are not available, Trubisky's not a bad option because he does offer a floor. He has some mobility to his game, and there were parts of last week where he looked good. He made some stupid decisions too, but that's part of playing him. You just accept that and you take the floor against Detroit.
Yeah, look, I'm pointing him out as much, we obviously you guys are Bears fans, but he is somebody who legitimately, if you were in a league where guys are rostering 2 quarterbacks and nobody's rostering Trubisky, he is a guy, in my opinion, who you can get away with starting as a QB1 in a single quarterback league if you've got a bunch of these guys rostered in other leagues. If he's ranked at 16th and Yates, you said 15th, that's what I'm saying. Like, he is a guy who you can consider in this matchup, but it is worth noting, Tags. I don't have it in front of me. It's somewhere in one of my spreadsheets that teams do generally the first game after a coach gets fired play better. Like it's more in the betting pros side of things where I look at sort of how they covered the spread and how far they surpass their implied point total. But generally speaking, the first game after a coach gets fired, the team does play better, generally speaking. So that is something and a good point by you to bear in mind. With that said, again, if you're in a pinch, you can go for it. Tight end tags outside the top 12. Who are you starting?
Tight end Jordan Reed. I really don't know why he's ranked so low. Do you guys have any insight into this? So, like, he suffered an injury that I don't know about?
No, not until the middle of this game, I'm sure. But no, he's just he didn't really produce that much. And so people aren't really looking at the fact that he's got 6 targets in each of the last 2 games, right?
Yep. So. When Kittle's out of the lineup, he's seen 6 targets in 4 of 5 games. The only one he didn't was when he was coming back from that injury against Green Bay, and he only played a portion of the snaps. So he's basically getting 6 targets every game, which is what we look for in tight ends. And if you go back to look at last week, I mean, Mullins was just off when targeting him. There were 3 targets that were completely, like, I don't know if there was a communication error or what, but now you look at this matchup that they have against the Bills. The Bills have tight ends have accounted for 20.8% of the production they've allowed to skill position players. That's the second highest mark in the NFL. Tight ends have averaged 6 receptions per game. That's the most in the NFL. 65 yards per game. That's second behind only the Bengals. So when you're getting targets against a defense that's been inefficient against covering tight ends, I like Jordan Reed this week, and I have him ranked at tight end 9. So I clearly like him much more than consensus does.
So let's just send Yates on tilt tags. Would you rather start Jordan Reed or Jonnu Smith?
Ooh, I have Jordan Reed slightly high. I do like Jonnu Smith this week, though, to be fair. But I would take Jordan Reed because I think it's just safer to play him.
How about Jordan Reed or Noah Fant?
I have Fant up at 6.
Oh, okay. All right. But that's fine. I agree with you on Jordan Reed. I absolutely do. I think that people are looking at the production and not really looking at how this matchup plays into it, and the fact that he is being targeted 6 targets at a tight end each of the last 2 weeks. Like, that's great. I'll take that any day of the week. Yates, how about you outside the top 12 in ECR?
Trey Burton. Trey Burton's at 16 in ECR right now. I've got him up at 13. And again, this is the tight end position. You throw 5 through 15 in a blender, and they're all kind of just in the same range. So, Trey Burton, 6 targets last week, got the touchdown, and you only saw Mo Alley Cox get 2 targets, Jack Doyle with 1. So it looks like they're starting to lean into Trey Burton, and it's a fantastic matchup here against Houston. Indianapolis should be able to put points up on the board. I think that Burton's a fine play.
Yeah. The guy I'll mention is Kyle Rudolph, assuming that Irv Smith is out. I don't know if we've seen anything on him yet, whether or not he practiced. But if he's out, Adam Thielen, when I originally ranked him, it was thinking maybe Adam Thielen would also be out, in which case Rudolph was a much better start. He's still, I think, a guy who you might be able to get away with if Irv Smith is out. Let's get to our top sits. Again, these are not guys we're telling you to bench. These are just guys who are fading a little bit based on where they are in ECR. Let's start with you, Tags. Let's go with a running back, somebody who is inside the top 20 that you're not really feeling this week.
We already talked about it. Kareem Hunt. I don't get it. I don't know. Against the Titans teams running backs are not averaging a whole lot of touches against them. But when you look at Hunt, you're just like, I don't know what everybody's seeing in him outside of the name, because he is a good football player. He's clearly behind Nick Chubb. They decided to give Chubb a carry inside the red zone last week, and he turned it into a touchdown.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt, he was touted. The reason that people drafted Kareem Hunt wasn't because he was a phenomenal running back on the ground. They drafted him because he was going to be a pass catching option out of the backfield. Well, Kareem Hunt hasn't totaled more than 3 receptions since back in week 1. He hasn't topped 28 receiving yards all season long.
Yep.
Despite having more than double the red zone carries that Nick Chubb does, Hunt has 4 rushing touchdowns to Chubb's 6.
Yep.
He's been inefficient for the most part. Can he fall into the end zone? Sure, but where do people get off ranking him at 14? To finish as the number 14 running back, you need to basically score, I'm going to say, right around 14, 15 PPR points, maybe even 15. How is he getting there without scoring and doing things that he's not done all year? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's both Tags and I have him at 22. This will become a really, really good podcast if you somehow have him inside your top 10. So give me the ranking. What do you got?
No, I have him at 20. I completely agree. This was the guy I was going to talk about, because Kareem Hunt, he's really high in ECR. I don't get it. Tags brought up the points that, they've tried utilizing him in the red zone, and it has not worked. He's been failing to convert with his opportunities, and then they put Nick Chubb in the game, which every other person alive would be like, no, use Nick Chubb in that capacity, and hey, it works. So yeah, I mean, it's similar to another guy I'll bring up, which is Alvin Kamara. You're looking at the passing volume is what's supposed to sustain them, and it's not there. I mean, I didn't even realize that he hasn't reeled in more than 3 receptions since week 1. That's ridiculous for someone who has the pass catching chops that Kareem Hunt does. So yeah, you got to be fading Kareem Hunt heading into this week.
And again, let us make it as clear as possible. Yates, you said 20th. Tags, you and I are at 22. That's at a low-end RB2, okay? That's a guy who, if you roster Kareem Hunt, you're probably starting him. Again, I just want to stress this because I don't want people being like, Dan and Tags and Yates said to sit. He's 22, okay? He's probably one of your better options that you have on your roster. I'm just saying that where he is, for all the reasons you guys said, in ETR, we all had the same guy. He's a guy who we're looking to fade.
I'd start Jonathan Taylor over him.
I'm not there. Where are you there, Yates? Would you start Taylor
over him? Yeah, I have
him?
Jonathan Taylor at 12. I have Kareem Hunt at 20.
Okay, right. Jonathan Taylor at 12, man. You guys are really...
No, I am at 19. I didn't say 12.
I heard you say 12, Tex. I do remember, and you said that early. But Yates, you're fine at 12. That's fine. I'm at 25 still. Again, part of this is also assuming that certain backs are going to play. We're going to need to see, for example, whether or not Myles Gaskin plays and everything like that. But regardless, for me with Taylor, I do want to start him this week, and where I roster him, I probably am going to start him just based on whatever the other names that are there. I don't roster them as well, but it is something where I have a little trepidation with Jonathan Taylor for the reasons that we have discussed coming in. But yeah, I agree. I would start Kareem Hunt over Jonathan Taylor, but yeah, I am definitely less into him than our consensus. All right, let's go to wide receiver. Yates, somebody within the top 30 who you're not feeling that much.
Man, there really wasn't anyone that jumped off the page, but the guy who stuck out is right on that edge. CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 30 in ECR, going up against Baltimore. I have him at wide receiver 36, so he's still someone that you can roll into your lineup, but yet as far as him being up in the top 30, I was a little more cautious. I mean, this is a very, very tough matchup. Looking at what he did the last time out that Andy Dalton and him played together, this is just a matchup that I want to try to avoid if I can.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm not fading them that much based on my rankings against the ECR, because I think the ECR is baking this in pretty fairly well, but I don't really want to start either. I think Baltimore's... I don't want to be facing anybody on Baltimore next week because I think they're, even though this was really more of a concession to them, I think they're going to be angry. They're going to be so desperate for a win, assuming that they lose today, which we'll see. So that guy, Lamb for sure. Cooper a little bit as well, fading a little bit. But how about you, Tags? Who's your guy?
Yeah, I mean, I had CeeDee Lamb. I have him down at wide receiver 40. So I'm definitely a lot lower on him. That was actually the name I had down. But if you want another one, we could do Cole Beasley.
Yep.
Josh Allen has not been the same quarterback without John Brown on the field. Beasley has now finished with 40 or fewer than 40 yards in 3 of his last 4 games. If you look at the matchup against the 49ers this year, there's been just one slot-heavy wide receiver who's finished with more than 8.6 PPR points, and that was Braxton Berrios. He saw 8 targets, caught 6 of them for 59 yards and a touchdown, which I guess they're very comparable wide receivers. I think Beasley's a better player, obviously, but it all comes back to Josh Allen. I think this is going to be one of the slower-paced games. That's another game where I don't really understand the total. It feels like it's higher than it should be.
Yes.
At 48 points between those two, which always worries me. Allen did only throw the ball 24 times last week, which is probably why Beasley only saw 4 targets. So I could be, I could be underestimating him a little bit. I just don't feel like he should be inside the top 30 wide receivers is basically what it comes down to.
No, I don't think you're wrong on this one at all, Tags. He was both Lamb and Beasley were the 2 guys on my list. And yeah, it's really what Josh Allen is without John Brown on the field. It's not the same player for me, and not against San Francisco, who, as they're getting healthier, has a pretty strong pass defense. Just not really where I want to go near Beasley. Again, somebody who I think is still ranked for me as a very low-end wide receiver 3, but compared to consensus, which I believe, what was it, 28?
Is that 28 or 29? Yeah.
28 or 29. Yeah, he is 29. I'm a good 6 or 7 spots below that. How about you, Yates, on Beasley?
I'm right in line with ECR. It's more so to do with the options behind him. Like, I would have a very hard time putting Jacoby Myers above Cole Beasley or Christian Kirk with Kyler Murray's, shoulder-ish question marks. Like, that's just more so why Cole Beasley is up in my top 30.
How about Sterling Shepard? Because Tags talked about him earlier.
Yeah, so that's kind of the same situation. position where I think they're going to provide a safe enough floor or around the same floor. I might give the slight edge to Sterling Shepard there. I'm sure that by the time Sunday rolls around, that Sterling Shepard will be higher in my rankings.
Yeah, that's kind of the guy that stuck out to me, which there's a, 5-spot difference between them and ECR. That's not, I mean, they're not ranked that far apart in my rankings, but it's still something where I don't think twice. If somebody says who you want to start between those two guys, it's definitely Shepard for me. So I'm with you. We're on the same page there for all of those. Let's go to quarterback tags. Who's a guy within the top 12 who you might be looking to fade a little bit this week?
I mean, it's really difficult because I kind of fall in line with a lot of ECR, and I really don't want to say Kirk Cousins because I understand why people would want to play him. But the player I'm worried about is Deshaun Watson. I talked about it. There have been 16 games in his career where he's played without Will Fuller. In those 16 games, he averages 227 passing yards, 7.26 yards per attempt, and 1.3 touchdowns per game. You compare that to with Fuller, 281 yards per game, 1.5 more yards per attempt. That's a massive number. It's not like, oh, there's give and take, and there were some matchups in there. This is a pretty big sample size. You know, we're talking about a full year of games without Will Fuller, 2 seasons worth with Fuller, and it's a 1.5 yard difference. Touchdowns, almost a full touchdown more with Fuller on the field. And on top of that, those games without Fuller before, those are with DeAndre Hopkins on the field. Right. So, I mean, Brandon Cooks is a good football player, but he's not DeAndre Hopkins. I just worry. It has nothing to do with Deshaun Watson. It has everything to do with this matchup. And if you go back to the beginning of the year when he struggled just a little bit against the Chiefs, Ravens, and Steelers, you're going into a matchup with the Colts, who have allowed, I think it's the 3rd fewest fantasy points overall to opponents. If you add up quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, the 3rd fewest points per game. So it's not a great matchup to begin with. So you already had some concern. The only reason that I'm worried about fading Deshaun Watson is because of the fact that the total's so high in this game. But to know that it is coming down, it has come down 2 full points since I made that pick. That's making me feel a bit better. So he's the one I'm certainly worried about.
So when I was putting together my rankings, my initial projections, I want Watson lower tags, but I can't, like, I have him 5th as well, which is where he is in ECR. And part of that is that I am worried again about Murray and running it near the goal line and running for touchdown. So I'm keeping Watson ahead. I want to fade him, but like, I'm not sure who to fade him for. Would you start Murray over Watson, Kyler Murray?
No, Murray I actually have at 9. I have Watson at 7. So, I mean, I'm not. These are guys that are almost impossible to bench.
Right. But it's worth pointing out, though, Tex, because I do get, and I don't know about you guys on your start sit shows on Sunday mornings, I do get the question of, like, who do I bench, Deshaun Watson or Josh Allen? You know, you shouldn't have both these guys on your roster at this point, but you do, and you're making this choice. So, Tags, who are I assume Mahomes, Wilson, Rodgers, and Allen ahead of Watson. Who are the other two guys?
No, Herbert? Allen's not. I don't like Allen this week. Okay. I have him at 8. I have Herbert. I have Lamar Jackson above him. I have Taysom Hill above him.
Taysom Hill. Okay.
Taysom Hill's just, he's safe. I mean, that's the thing is, like, I feel like when I see Taysom Hill ranked at 6, I'm like, it's probably too high. But it all comes down to, would I rather start these other quarterbacks over him?
Yep.
Because the floor that he presents against Atlanta. I mean, we saw him complete, 19 of 23 passes against Atlanta the last time they played. Right. He ran for 2 touchdowns. I mean, there's just a really high floor with Taysom Hill in that matchup.
Yep. All right. Yates, very quickly on Watson. I mean, is it kind of just like we feel, which is you have concerns, but you're starting him anyway?
Yeah, completely. I've got him at 7. So he's still someone that you're starting. But yeah, I definitely do have those concerns.
Yeah. For me right now, he's still at 5. Again, this is early in the week, and there is no Thursday night game at this point. So I'm certainly going to be able to take some time and dig into it and everything like that. But yeah, for me, he's still at 5. But at the same time, this is at the point where I kind of feel uncomfortable once I get past the top 3 for me, Mahomes, Wilson, and Rodgers. After that, I'm like, I have slight question marks about everybody. Yates, how about you? Who's your guy within the top 12 who you're fading?
Yeah, and it's fading. You're still starting this guy, but Correct. Russell Wilson all the way up at 2. I don't understand that. I mean, over his
don't hate on Russ.
Over his past 3 games, he's finished as the 19th quarterback. I heard you guys. The 12th and the 19th quarterback. So Russ just hasn't looked the same. I don't know what the heck is going on with this offense, but I mean, his first 3 games of the season, he was the QB1, QB4, QB2, and since then it's just been downhill. So to have him all the way up at 2, I feel like that's like his absolute ceiling, obviously, and there's a very small percentage chance that he gets there. So I've got him down at 8 this week. I just don't see how he can hit all the way up at QB2.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely, over the last couple of weeks, they definitely are not passing nearly as much as they were earlier in the season, but still, Tags, he's 2 for me. What about you?
He's 2 for me as well. I mean, he's finished with 20-plus fantasy points in every game but 2. And the 2 games that he didn't were against the Rams, the worst matchup in football, and the Eagles, who are actually a really good pass defense. I don't think people realize just how good the Eagles defense has been this year. So the Giants are actually better than people think they are.
And by the way, he could have if, DK Metcalf catches that ball, it's fine if Metcalf's not down at the 1. Like, he could have easily had a bigger game in that.
For sure. I mean, and if you look at the Giants, they're on paper, I think that they're the 12th toughest matchup for, I can't remember what it was, but the schedule that the Giants have played this year has been one of the easier schedules in the league. So Russell Wilson, he's going to bounce back. He's fine.
Yeah, that's basically how I feel. Can't get him out of my top couple there. But I hear you. It certainly is concerning given that they are sort of reverting.
And again, you start Russell Wilson. I'm not saying to sit
I
Russ,
get it.
But yeah.
I won't even make the joke of Yates telling you to bench Russell Wilson because, God forbid anybody listen to that. All right, tight end Yates, somebody who you're fading. Go ahead.
Jonnu Smith?
Yes. That's the correct answer. For me. Tags, I know you said that you have Jonnu Smith high this week, right?
I like Jonnu Smith. I'm playing him this week.
Why? I'm not telling you to necessarily bench him because he's 13th.
I want to know why you're benching him.
The fact that what has he done recently? He's a touchdown dependent tight end too now.
What gives you optimism that Smith is going to produce in this matchup?
So the Browns, they've tight ends have averaged 8 targets per game against them. That's the 3rd most in the NFL. The thing is that I like about him is that Derrick Henry's playing so damn well right now, is that teams have to account for that. And they're basically forgetting everything else. If you saw the Ryan Tannehill rushing touchdown last week, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you actually watch that game, you'll see everything I'm talking about because basically Ryan Tannehill, he runs a bootleg, like a play action, and he turns around and there is nobody on that side of the field. So he kind of just runs with his wide receivers and he just waits until they're open. Cleveland is going to sell out to stop Derrick Henry. They're going to try and sell out to stop him. I mean, you can only do so much, right? But teams, when they get down in the red zone against the Browns, they've targeted their tight ends a ton. They've seen a league high 22 targets in the red zone against the Browns. That bodes well for someone who's a little bit touchdown dependent. So, I mean, I have Smith at number 12 in my ranking, so I'm not crazy high on him.
Okay.
But I'm saying I don't think that he's someone that I'd bench him for sure.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood then, Tags. I thought when you were saying who, I forget who it was, but that you had him up higher than 12. Yeah, that's fine. I have him at 13 Yates. Where do you actually have Jonnu Smith?
16.
Okay. All right. I get it. I mean, I'm looking at his game log, actually. The last time he had more than 32 yards receiving was, I don't
week 5.
know what week it was because I had the 1 week, maybe week 5 or week 4 or whatever
week 5
week it
against
was.
Buffalo, he had 5
week
for
5
40.
against Buffalo. I mean, and I get it. He scores touchdowns, but yeah. But at 13, yes, that's where I agree that I would have him as well. Tags, would you rather start Jonnu Smith or Mike Gesicki against Cincinnati?
I have Gesicki higher.
Would you rather start Jonnu Smith or same game Austin Hooper?
Ooh, those two are right next to each other. I guess I'll go Hooper because I feel safer about his targets, but it's close.
Yates, Jonnu Smith or Austin Hooper?
I'll go Hooper there, but it's close.
How about Jonnu Smith or Yates, Jordan Reed?
I have Jordan Reed at 15. I have Jonnu Smith at 16. Again, all these guys are in the same tier from 5 to
our
15.
Usual caveat, right?
Yeah,
once we're here talking about
terrible.
tight ends, it's like, whatever. Okay, Tags, tight end that you're fading, who's obviously not Jonnu Smith.
Hayden Hurst. Okay. The Saints, early in the year, they looked like they were going to be a good matchup for tight ends, especially after we watched Darren Waller rack up 12 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown on primetime. That was in week 2. Outside of that game against him, they've allowed 39 yards per game to tight ends. I mean, Hurst has done enough that he deserves consideration to be in your starting lineup regardless, but we don't know if Julio Jones is going to play, and when Julio's out, Hurst has been relatively bad. And again, Malcolm Jenkins, I think part of the reason that they started out slow is because Malcolm Jenkins was on a new team. He was kind of working his way into the Saints scheme. We've seen the Saints basically turn that defense around. They're looking like the defense that we thought that they were going to be when the season began. It's just, some of those moving parts took some time to come around, and as of late, they have been slowing and shutting down tight ends. So Hayden Hurst.
All right, good enough for me. Let's go to our top deep sleepers. We'll go through this one quick. Let's start with you, Yates. Let's start with you. Give me a running back here who's outside the top 36, who you might think think might have a good game in this one.
Yeah, complete dart throw, but Boston Scott, RB52 in ECR, that's too low. I think that he is someone that you can consider as a low-end RB3 who gets a bump up in full PPR formats. We've seen Scott's snap percentage jump up here the past couple weeks, and which is concerning for Miles Sanders, but yeah, I do think that Scott can become someone who, yeah, again, this is a desperation play, but you're looking in this range. Yeah, Scott's a good one to go with.
Tags, you can give your answer, but that is the correct answer. In terms
I had two names down. Boston Scott was one, and the other one was Carlos Hyde. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I think that Hyde's going to have this starting job again and that they're going to continue to give him more touches than Chris Carson, but you can't say it's a non-0% chance that they're going to give Hyde some touches in this offense. He didn't play particularly well against Philly, but it was a brutal matchup. I have no idea why that they felt like Hyde was the option. So there's just an outside chance that he actually gets, a dozen touches in this game, which is more than enough to start a running back that's, again, well outside the top 40.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they certainly got him heavily involved, more involved than Carson in the game. Unclear whether or not that was just as the first game back with Carson, so let's ease him in, or whether or not Hyde, who has run fairly well, is going to be able to carve out a bigger role. So I like both of those, but Boston Scott was definitely my guy against Green Bay. I think he definitely should be ranked, a good 10 spots higher than he is right now. How about wide receivers? Let's go deep outside the top 50 tags. Who's a guy who you're looking at potentially starting?
I think I'm going to go with Emmanuel Sanders. Rather than take the guy that was obvious that's right on the borderline. I'll go Emmanuel Sanders because the last time they played against the Falcons, Taysom Hill was under center, and Sanders finished that game with 4 catches for 66 yards on 5 targets. That's good. It's solid, especially for a deep sleeper. That's all you really want. It could have been much more than that. He had a 57-yard touchdown that was called back due to a penalty. So, the Falcons have allowed 21 different wide receivers to finish top 40 against them. Sanders, again, he's not a smash player or anything like that, but I think he can deliver a solid floor against this Falcons team.
How about you, Yates? Who's your guy outside the top 50?
Yeah, if we're going outside the top 50, Denzel Mims deserves consideration there. We talked about him as a deep sleeper, someone that you can pick up off of your waiver wire when waivers run on Saturday morning. And then outside of that, if you want to go a little bit further down, Hunter Renfrow saw 9 targets last week. Again, this is a matchup where you start your wide receivers against the Jets. And a little bit, it's dependent upon DJ Chark and Chris Conley sitting, but if they do, and you're absolutely desperate and in a pinch, Colin Johnson against Minnesota, he's down at 80 in ECR right now. He can be picked up everywhere and plugged in.
Yeah, certainly if those guys are out. I'll also mention Henry Ruggs, who tags you mentioned a little bit earlier. You can certainly beat the Jets deep, and it was great to see Henry Ruggs tie his season high in targets with 5 last week, but he did get a little more involved. Of course, Mims, as we talked about, and maybe QT just because, again, they're options. You need options. You know what I mean? I know Duke Johnson's going to get 14 targets, obviously, and Brandon Cooks is going to get 20, but you're going to need options at this point. So QT is a guy who I think if you're in a pinch, he's ranked 54th, you might be able to roll out there. All right, let us finish up start of the week and lock and sit of the week. Pardon me. Let's go with start of the week. Tags, who's your start of the week this week?
Jonathan Taylor. Play him.
Okay, Tags is optimistic. I like it. I will be playing Jonathan Taylor, but I will be chewing my fingernails while I'm doing it.
No. Didn't we do this last couple weeks with Duke Johnson and Wayne Gallman? Just do it.
Yeah, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to have no fingernails left at the end of the game, so deal with that, buddy. How about you, Yates? Who's your start of the week?
Jonathan Taylor for sure. If we want another name, I'll go with Kenyan Drake. I feel like you can confidently plug in Kenyan Drake.
I like it, Yates, because I'm not confident in plugging in Kenyan Drake. I mean, I'm again, sort of like Taylor, and I have him higher than Taylor. I'm starting him, but I'm a little nervous about it. I do like, again, that I do think he's going to get the goal line work here going in. All right, sit of the week. Tags, start with you. Who do you got?
CeeDee Lamb.
Yes, we all mentioned him. Absolutely. I'm running away from the whole passing game, unless something happens in today's game where the entire secondary goes down or something like that for the Ravens. But yeah, I agree with you. How about you, Yates? Sit of the week.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb was the guy I had written down as well.
Fine. Can't even come up with somebody off the top of your head. It's fine. No big deal. I don't even care. All right. Doesn't matter. That's it for today's Start Sit Show. Remember, enter our giveaway for the signed James Robinson helmet. All you have to do is leave an honest review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and go to fantasypros.com/contest. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow, as always, with our DFS show. And then Yates and I will be back on Friday with Dan and Kyle in the morning. We'll talk to you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get notified when we post videos in the future.